Gar Nervod. I am Tad Larkin, the lore master of Manda-LORE, and today I'll be digging through the archives to continue elaborating on the history of the galaxy. Where we last left off in this lecture series, we saw the fragmentation of the Empire into various squabbling warlord factions, kickstarting the First Imperial Civil War, Madam Director Isani Isard's rise and fall at the hands of Rogue Squadron, and the New Republic's military advances, where they liberated Coruscant and defeated many Imperial warlords. We also saw the revival of the Empire under Grand Admiral Thrawn before his defeat at the Battle of Bilbringi, the resurrection and final death of Emperor Palpatine, and the humble beginnings of Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order. In the wake of the Emperor's final death on Onderon, the Empire found itself once again in crisis. The surviving warlords carved out petty kingdoms within the deep core worlds. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Empire proper were united under a new ruling council based on the Outer Rim world of Ord Cantrell, and the few scattered loyalist worlds still in the core regions shored up their defenses. With the deaths of some of the veteran warlords, such as Moff Ardus Kane, who died during Operation Shadowhand, a new warlord arose, the former Imperial Guardsman Karnor Jax, who established his Crimson Empire within the carcass of the Empire proper, and took over the ruling council, installing for the first time ever alien council members, including a Deveronian, a Whippid, a Given, and a Defel. Jax himself discovered latent force sensitivity while in the service of Palpatine, and pledged himself to the tutelage of the Dark Lady of the Sith, Lumaya, who had taken it upon herself to continue the lineage of the Banite Sith Lords after Sidious's demise. However, Karnor Jax's rule wouldn't last for long, as a rival Imperial Guardsman, Kir Kanos, had discovered that Jax defied the Sacred Guardsman Oath and had played a part in the death of the Emperor they both served, and Kanos was out for vengeance. Kanos, despite still viewing himself as a loyal servant of the Emperor, had enlisted the help of a New Republic cell on Theta, and had resisted an attempt by Jax's forces to capture him. Meanwhile, the now General Wedge Antilles led efforts to liberate Theta aboard his new flagship, the refitted Luzankia, and afterward, Kanos challenged Jax to a final duel at the Guardsman training grounds on Yinchor, where he slew his rival. The remaining Imperial Council members became embroiled in their own squabbles, and after a series of assassination attempts and an attempt by Black Sun to replace some of the council members with clones, one individual, Zandal Karavis, who was working with an advanced Yuuzhan Vong scout named No Manor, declared himself the new Emperor. But Karavis soon deviated from Anor's plans and made enemies with the influential D'Asta family, and Kir Kanos, now working as a bounty hunter, was dragged into the situation as well, resulting in Karavis' untimely demise. Back in New Republic space, the Admiralty took a long hard look at their fleets of aging Mon Calamari refits, converted cargo haulers, and captured Imperial warships, and decided that the New Republic was in dire need of a proper navy, and so the new class modernization project was initiated, which would eventually produce a multitude of different warships, including the Republic-class Star Destroyer, the Endurance-class Fleet Carrier, and later, the Nebula-class Star Destroyer, among many others. Now, with the blessing of the New Republic Senate, Jedi Master Luke Skywalker began his search for Force-sensitive candidates to train at his newly established Jedi Praxium on Yavin 4. Meanwhile, Han Solo and Chewbacca went on a diplomatic mission to Kessel, where the prisoners of the spice mines had revolted against their Imperial overseers. They received a less than warm welcome by the new Masters of Kessel, and were captured and forced to mine spice with the rest of the prisoners, which included a young Force-sensitive human by the name of Kip Duran. Han, Chewie, and Kip managed to escape the spice mines in an old Imperial shuttle, but left the proverbial frying pan and went into the fire, stumbling upon a secret Imperial weapons research station in the nearby Maw Black Hole cluster. The Maw installation had helped develop the Death Star's super laser as well as other Imperial superweapons, such as the World Devastators, and was guarded by Tarkin's confidant and former mistress, Admiral Natasi Daala, and her flotilla of 4 Imperial Star Destroyers. Daala had been ordered to guard the secret installation by Tarkin shortly before the Battle of Yavin and to await his orders. However, those orders never came, so she held fast for 11 standard years with no contact from the outside galaxy or knowledge of her lover's death. Now facing capture by Daala, Chewbacca was forced to labor with the other Wookiee slaves, while Han was tortured for information, and he recounted to her the destruction of the Death Stars, the fragmentation of the Empire, and the rise of the New Republic, which she did not take lightly. The trio were eventually able to escape, and stealing an experimental superweapon called the Sun Crusher, they outran Daala's ships, destroying one of her ISDs in the process before linking up with Luke and Lando Calrissian, who had journeyed to find out what happened to them. Kyp Durron had the honor of becoming a member of the first class of the Yavin 4 Praxium, including Jan Taurus, who Luke found on Eel Shah, Dorsk 81 from Kolm, Kirana T of the Singing Mountain Dathomiri Witch Clan, Corran Horn from Rogue Squadron, Kyle Katarn, and Mara Jade, among many, many others. These men and women of all different species and cultures would come together to shape the destiny of the new Jedi Order, but not without a few setbacks. The first of Luke's students to fail was Jan Taurus, who, while exploring the ruins of the other Massassi temples on Yavin 4, discovered the one that Exar Kun had been trapped in since the end of the Great Sith War, and became corrupted by the Sith spirit. Jan Taurus challenged Luke during a lightsaber training demonstration, but was quickly put in his place, and was later killed that night by Kun's spirit. The New Republic, meanwhile, was dealing with its own troubles. Admiral Daala was conducting hit and fade attacks against dozens of New Republic worlds, including Dantooine and later Mon Calamari. Akbar resigned from his command when he accidentally killed civilians on Vortex when his shuttle crashed into the Cathedral of Winds, and Mon Mothma became violently ill after being poisoned by an Imperial ambassador. Back on Yavin 4, the young and malleable Kyp Durron proved much easier to corrupt. Exar Kun fed into Kyp's hatred of the Empire since his parents' deaths, his brother's forced conscription, and his enslavement in the spice mines to the point where Kyp decided to take his own fight to the Imperials, and, while trying to retrieve the Sun Crusher, he was confronted by Luke. But the Jedi Master was no match for the combined strength of Kyp and Exar Kun, and was rendered comatose. As Luke lay in stasis for a standard month, his students sought the help from a Jedi holocron belonging to Master Voto Siosk Boss to restore him. Meanwhile, Kyp used the Sun Crusher to send several stars within the Cauldron Nebula into supernova in an attempt to destroy Daala's fleet. Next, he threatened the Imperial Academy world of Carida if they did not renounce the Empire. They did not, and the entire Carida system was vaporized by the ensuing collapse of its primary star. On Yavin 4, with the aid of Luke's young niece and nephew who were able to commune with Luke's spirit, the Jedi trainees banded together to fully vanquish the spirit of Exar Kun, and once the ancient Sith Lord was forced to depart the material plane, Luke was able to return to his body. Meanwhile, Kun's hold on Kyp Durron dissipated, and Han Solo was able to talk him down and convince him to surrender the Sun Crusher. Now returned after the Vortex disaster was revealed to be Imperial sabotage, Admiral Akbar led a New Republic fleet in a three-way engagement between them, Daala's fleet, and the personnel of the Maw installation, who had commandeered a prototype of the first Death Star, which resulted in both the prototype and the Sun Crusher being forced into one of the black holes of the Maw cluster, and Daala fled to the Deep Core, where she joined High Admiral Blitzer Harst's Zero Command. Rather than face a government tribunal for his crimes, Kyp's fate was put in the hands of Master Skywalker, who forgave him, since he had been under Exar Kun's influence. However, his choices at Carida would stick with him for the rest of his life, and he would earn criticism from his Jedi peers even in his later years. Mon Mothma herself was healed by the prowess of the Force-sensitive Mon Calamari Sealgal, who went on to become a student of Luke's Praxium. However, Mothma would not return to her duties as Chief of State, and instead nominated Leia Organa Solo in the next election. And while Leia ascended to the position of Chief of State, Mothma returned to her original position in the Old Republic, as Senator of her native Bormia sector, though she sometimes filled in as acting Chief of State for Leia on several occasions. Two Jedi hopefuls left the Praxium during and after the Exar Kun debacle: Kyle Katarn, who had his own run-in with the dark side on Dromund Kaas a year earlier and feared falling to it again, and Corran Horn, who was under the guise of Kieran Halcyon to learn the ways of the Jedi to help save his wife Mirax from the Invid pirate gang. The Invids, under former Imperial Moff Leonia Tavira, were in league with the fearsome Force-sensitive Jensari warriors, who, after Tavira was defeated at the Battle of Suzefi, were confronted by Luke Skywalker, who challenged their incorrect perceptions about the Jedi Order, and a cautious friendship between the two Force sects was established. By 12 ABY, the New Republic faced opposition from the historically fanatically pro-Imperial Senex and Juvex sectors, where the former Emperor's hand, Roganda Ismarin, and her son, rumored to be an offspring of Palpatine, sought to recover the Eye of Palpatine's superweapon, mentioned in Part 7 of this series. But the Eye of Palpatine would never make it into Ismarin's hands, as Luke Skywalker, working with the spirit of the Old Republic Jedi who had originally stopped the device in 18 BBY, Callista Ming, destroyed the battle moon above Belsavis. Now extracted from the Eye's computer system and inhabiting the body of Luke's former student, Cray Mingala, the Jedi Master fell in love with Callista. However, her newfound inability to touch the Force would cause a rift in their relationship, as she became obsessed with reconnecting to the Force. As the power and influence of the Galactic Empire waned in the aftermath of Endor, the long-standing agreement of non-interference between the Hutt Khajidiks and the Empire became less and less relevant, and some Hutt clans, such as the Basadi clan under Durga the Hutt, became emboldened to build up their own militaries to challenge the new balance of galactic power. Durga enlisted the help of Bevel Lemelinsk, one of the chief Death Star designers, to design a superweapon specifically for him, culminating in Project Darksaber, which was basically the Death Star's super laser without the moon-sized hull and wrapped in armor. The New Republic became aware of the Darksaber when, after a diplomatic visit from Durga on Coruscant, they discovered that the Death Star plans were missing from the archives shortly after his departure, and a strike was launched against the superweapon in the Hoth asteroid belt. The Darksaber didn't even work properly, and was sandwiched between two asteroids that it failed to clear from its path when the super laser malfunctioned, ending Durga's dreams of propelling the Hutts once again into being a galactic power. Back in Imperial space, Daala grew tired of participating in the petty squabbles of the Deep Core warlords, and longed for a strong, unified empire. And the now Vice Admiral Gilad Pellaeon, who was currently serving High Admiral Teradok, shared her dream of a unified empire, fondly remembering his service under Thrawn. With great difficulty, Daala managed to convince the 13 most prominent warlords to convene on the Sauce Beacon asteroid base, where, after 3 hours of the most inane arguments based on old grudges and childish insecurities, Daala and Pellaeon donned their gas masks as the conference room was filled with a nerve agent, killing the remaining warlords. With no leaders or contingency in place, their fleets one by one handed over command to Daala. What would become known colloquially as the Imperial Remnant was now for the most part unified under a single head of state, who held the title of Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet. But while the Supreme Commander was capable of leading a military force, there was a need for a more experienced body to actually govern the interstellar nation itself, and the Moff Council, ruling from the new capital at Bastion, was later established to advise as well as carry out the laws and edicts on behalf of the Supreme Commander. Eager for revenge against the Jedi, Daala commenced a two-pronged assault on Yavin 4, where Vice Admiral Pellaeon led the first wave. But after ground troops were deployed, the Jedi trainees of Luke's Praxium banded together to create a force storm, which scattered Pellaeon's fleet across the Yavin system. The second wave consisted of Daala's flagship, the Executor-class superstar destroyer Nighthammer, taken from the now-deceased Sander Dalvardis. However, as the Jedi carved their way through Juggernauts, walkers, and other heavy Imperial weaponry, Akbar, leading a New Republic fleet, arrived to engage the superstar destroyer. Callista Ming flew a captured TIE bomber into the Nighthammer's hangar and began destroying the ship from inside. She then confronted Daala and attempted to kill her. However, she recognized this as a clear path to the dark side of the Force and spared her, retreating into exile. In the aftermath of this disastrous battle and the loss of a superstar destroyer, Daala finally admitted defeat and relinquished command of the Empire to Admiral Pellaeon, trying out civilian life for a while as a colonial governor with a former love interest. However, this will not be the last anyone has seen of Natassi Daala. While the Empire was now unified and efforts were coordinated to rearming itself, there were still those who thought that the recent reunification was not enough, and longed for a return of the Palpatinistic Empire that once held the galaxy in a vice grip. So, the Empire Reborn movement was founded by Dark Jedi and former Imperial Procurator of Justice, Lord Hethrir. Hethrir recruited the likes of Imperial Admiral Galactic and the Chistori Dark Jedi and failed student of Luke's Praxium, Dasan, who, along with his chief lieutenant, Tavion Axmus, sought to create an army of dark side users, artificially imbuing them with force-amplifying crystals. A grave mistake was made when Dasan ordered Tavion to capture Jan Ors, the girlfriend of Kyle Katarn, and with the help of his former teacher Luke Skywalker, as well as Lando Calrissian and a rogue squadron, Kyle managed to destroy Dasan's superstar destroyer Doomgiver, and dueled the Dark Jedi during his attempted assault on the Jedi Praxium. This incident convinced Katarn to once again walk the Jedi path, and rejoin his colleagues on Yavin 4. As the new Supreme Commander, Pellaeon made preparations for a renewed assault against the New Republic, to increase morale and show them that the Empire was still a force to be reckoned with. In a recent acquisition of the former territories of the Pentastar alignment, Pellaeon took command of the late Grand Moff Artus Kane's superstar destroyer, Reaper, and assembled a fleet to retake the old Imperial capital of Orinda, which swiftly fell to his forces, after which he took 6 neighboring star systems and sent his terms to the New Republic on Ord Mantell. Respect the Empire's reclaimed borders, and no further offensives will be launched for the time being. The Republic promptly responded by dispatching a retaliatory counteroffensive, led by General Wedge Antilles aboard the Luzankia, and the ensuing cat-and-mouse chase of the Reaper across the Mid-Rim resulted in deadly battles at Corthenia, Hewitt, Tataglia, Darkon, Traval Pakor, Oraco, Tayan, and Oberdan before finally trading blows above Orinda itself. The outcome of the Battle of Orinda looked grim for the New Republic. As the 2 superstar destroyers clashed in a spectacular broadside, the Endurance-class fleet carrier suffered heavy damage, and Luzankia would have likely been scuttled had it not been for Rogue Squadron, taking out Pellaeon's interdictor cruisers and allowing Antilles' fleet to escape. The campaign was a draw, though Pellaeon's military capabilities were severely diminished. In 13 ABY, both the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant sponsored champions in the sacred dogfighting sport of the Adumari on neutral Adumar, in order to win favor with the world in the hopes that they would choose a side, and the New Republic's Wedge Antilles bested the Remnant's Tor Fenir, which, after a failed Imperial invasion when things didn't go their way, the Adumari Union formally joined the New Republic. Following an incident on Nam Chorios involving Death Seed plague-carrying Droch beetles, Seti Ashgad, and a 400-year-old Hutt Jedi survivor, an offensive was conducted in the border regions against Moff Gentelles. Meanwhile, Admiral Pellaeon lost the Reaper during a doomed campaign against the Adumari. Another crisis would soon grip the Imperial Remnant, as yet another splinter faction, calling themselves the Restored Empire, formed in the wake of the Carenth Dissension, sought to gain complete control of the Empire while simultaneously destroying the New Republic, attempting an assassination of Chief of State Organa Solo and her children, as well as attacking Orinda with a fleet of aging Clone Wars surplus ships. The entire debacle was thwarted by Kir Kanos, and the organization fell apart with the death of its leader. In the aftermath of Dasan's failure 2 standard years earlier, Hethrir had allied himself with a powerful extra-dimensional being known as Waru, who had the power to heal all illnesses as well as open non-Force sensitive beings to the Force, continuing with the scheme of creating an army of Force sensitives to wrestle control of the galaxy. Capturing the Solo children, Hethrir planned to sacrifice Anakin Solo to Waru, while Jacen and Jaina were put into a training camp to one day become one of his Force-sensitive warriors. But he was stopped by Luke, Leia, Han, Chewbacca, and the droids. Angered, Waru consumed Hethrir instead, before returning to his home dimension of other space. While the Empire Reborn movement crumbled, Desan's former second-in-command, Tavion Axmis, began her own dark side cult, called the Disciples of Ragnos, with the goal of recovering the staff of Marka Ragnos and resurrecting the long-dead Sith Lord. Jedi Master Kyle Katarn's two apprentices, Jaden Kor and Rosh Pennin, helped uncover the plot and worked against Tavion. However, Rosh fell to the dark side and joined her, only being turned back by Katarn after almost being killed by Jaden in a duel. Kyle and Jaden joined Grandmaster Luke and the rest of the Jedi in an ambush on Tavion's forces at Korriban, and during a fierce duel with Tavion, Jaden broke the Scepter of Ragnos, ensuring that Marka Ragnos' spirit could never return to the material plane. The subsequent years following the Orinda campaign, Empire Reborn crisis, and the fall of the Disciples of Ragnos remained relatively peaceful, with a lull in hostilities as the Imperial Remnant licked its wounds, and the New Republic continued to focus on modernizing its fleets. Meanwhile, Skywalker continued training the next generation of Jedi Knights, reforming the Order to resemble something more structured akin to the old Jedi Order, however with key differences, such as the removal of the age limit to Jedi trainees and the endorsement of marriage and relationships instead of shunning them. In 16 ABY, the New Republic encountered a new threat, this time coming close to home in the Core Worlds region, when the Yavathan viceroy of the Duskan League, Nil Spar, who had liberated his people in a revolt against the Empire shortly after Endor, visited Coruscant on a diplomatic mission. The talks seemed to be going well, until the Yavatha discovered an unarmed New Republic scout ship in the Cornoct cluster, sent to investigate an unaccounted-for Imperial fleet, and was used as a pretense to accuse the New Republic of spying. In truth, Spar was a xenophobic despot, and when his people rose up against the Empire, they also captured the infamous Black Sword fleet, stationed at Enzoth for repairs. Spar used this captured fleet to great effect in what would become known as the Black Fleet Crisis, using it to commit genocide against several non-Yavatha species in the Cornoct cluster while accusing Leia of warmongering and calling for her resignation. Duskan League and New Republic forces came to blows at Dornick 319. However, the assaults of the New Republic's K-Wing bombers were halted when the Yavatha revealed they were carrying hostages, and the Republic was forced to shamefully retreat. It wasn't until Spar captured Han Solo and sent a holo feed directly to Leia of him torturing her husband that the New Republic stopped dragging its feet and declared a state of war against the Duskan League. And at the climactic battle of Enzoth, in an ironic reversal of fortune, the enslaved former Imperials regained control of their ships and jumped the Black Fleet to the deep core. The remaining Yavatha forces fought to the bitter end, but were no match for the New Republic's modern fleet. It is unknown what became of Spar. However, the Black Fleet, once reaching the deep core, was dispersed, with some ships returning to the core and joining the New Republic, others joining the Imperial Remnant, while some joined Daala, now the leader of a new generation of warlords in the deep core. By 17 ABY, a rather unpopular Senate resolution was passed, allowing former Imperials to represent their home sectors within the New Republic Senate, which looked good on flimsiplast but was actually a nightmare for Leia, creating gridlock within the government as pro-Imperials opposed her at every opportunity. To add to this, a bomb had been set off within the Senate building, killing and injuring dozens, but Leia managed to survive. The detonator had been placed by Brachus, a former student of Luke's who had fell to the dark side and was now working with Queller, another of Luke's failed students. Queller had just killed millions during his hostile takeover of the Almanian system in the Outer Rim, and was now working against Organa Solo's administration to incite a new rebellion and rip the New Republic apart via means of civil war. When Luke Skywalker was captured by Queller during his investigation, Queller forced Leia to resign as Chief of State, and while she and General Antilles led a strike force to rescue Luke and liberate Almania, Mon Mothma filled in as temporary Chief of State until new elections could be held. Leia managed to kill Queller while he was cut off from the Force by a Ysalamiri. Meanwhile, R2 and C-3PO infiltrated Queller's droid factories and stopped the production of self-destructing droids, and with the passing of this crisis, Leia was allowed to resume her term. Back in Imperial Remnant space, the Moff Council saw the inclusion of former Imperials in the New Republic Senate as a prelude to invasion, and contacted Daala behind Pellion's back, and plans for a hammer and anvil strike at the New Republic were made. But however displeased Pelion was with the plan, he had hoped that snatching a few victories would satiate the Moffs enough to persuade them to consider a ceasefire, perhaps even a full-on peace agreement. Things were going well for the Remnant at first. Pellion's forces were able to seize Adumar, Terrace, and Champala. However, Daala's forces, launching from the Deep Core, were stopped in their tracks by Garmbel Iblis at Caamas, forcing Daala to retreat with her last remaining Star Destroyer, not resurfacing again until 24 standard years later. With Daala out of the picture, both Garmbel Iblis's and Akbar's fleets were able to coordinate against Pelion, defeating Imperial forces at Champala, Kataris, Tangreen, and Anx Minor. The Remnant's borders had officially shrunk to encompass barely 8 sectors, and with the loss of 2 of its remaining Superstar Destroyers, their military capacity was effectively crippled. The New Republic wasn't able to enjoy its victory for long, as by 18 ABY it became embroiled in the Corellian Insurrection. Already a fiercely independent-minded system since sitting out the Clone Wars, the 5 inhabited worlds of the Corellia system had never seemed to fully embrace their membership within the New Republic, not even after the fall of their much-hated Imperial-sponsored diktat. These sentiments were exasperated by the members of the Triad, who wished to use Centerpoint Station, mentioned all the way back in Part 1 of this series, as a superweapon to secure Corellia's independence, as well as the Human League, sponsored by the Imperial Remnant and headed by Han Solo's estranged cousin, Thrakancel Solo. The Overden on Salonia and the Drawlists on Drawl also worked with the Triad and the Human League. The Triad used Centerpoint to generate an interdiction field around the entire system, and coordinated with the Human League, Drawlists, and the Overden to locate the planetary repulsors used by the Celestials to build the Corellia system. Now they threatened to generate supernovas using the station to sue for independence. A Hydro Spanner was thrown into the Triad's plans when Sal Solo double-crossed them, looking to set himself up as the new diktat of an independent Corellia. Meanwhile, Leia, Han, Chewbacca, the Solo children, and Mara managed to wrestle control of the Drawl repulsor, which Anakin used then to disrupt Centerpoint. Using experimental Bakuran technology said to negate interdiction fields, a joint New Republic Bakuran relief force entered the system and battled over Centerpoint. And despite over-surmounting odds with Triad reinforcements, the New Republic was victorious. The Corellian Insurrection was seen overall as another political blunder, the New Republic sticking its nose into planetary matters. And while the Corellians were content to accept New Republic membership for the time being, that independent spark would, as well as Sal Solo's return, flare up again decades later. In the meantime, Leia's administration received enough criticism for her to resign, and the Calibop, Ponk Gaversum, was subsequently elected as the new Chief of State. In the wake of the disastrous campaign of 17 ABY, Pelion saw the Empire's inevitable decline and knew in his heart that it was time to put peace negotiations on the table. However, a good number of the Moffs weren't totally on board, while Moff Disra was utterly against it, and would work secretly against Pelion's wishes. Disra's scheme to wrestle control of the Empire from Pelion was to first introduce a crisis of faith in the New Republic. In this case, from the vaults of Palpatine's storehouse on Wayland, a partial copy of the Caamas document, explained in Part 7 of this series implicating the Bothans, found its way into the hands of Leia Organa Solo, and was scrutinized by the New Republic Senate. While the New Republic was on the verge of being torn asunder by those who wished to punish the entire Bothan species for the devastation of Caamas, and those who wished to wait until more information could be uncovered to pinpoint the actual Bothan individuals who participated in the operation, among many other planetary squabbles resurfacing, Disra hired a con man named Flim to don blue makeup and red contact lenses and masquerade as Grand Admiral Thrawn, in an attempt to sway support of the Moffs away from Pelion. Pelion, meanwhile, anchored his fleet at an undisclosed location in complete calm silence, awaiting a New Republic envoy that would never come, as Disra had intercepted Pelion's formal peace offering before it even reached New Republic space. Disra then dispatched Captain Zothip's pirate fleet, painted in New Republic insignias, to take out Pelion, but the old admiral was able to defeat the pirates and deduced that his plans for peace talks had been sabotaged. A few failed attempts to recover the full Caamas document were carried out at Yaga Minor and even the imperial capital of Bastion itself, but had failed, and fighting broke out in Bothui's orbit after the destruction of its planetary shield by imperial saboteurs. Luckily, Disra's ambush was discovered by Han and Lando, and the survivors of the skirmish united against the imperial foes. Back at Yaga Minor, Pelion made a surprise visit to Disra and the foe Thrawn, and saw right through his guise. Now exposed, Disra and Flim were taken into custody, and the swindled Moffs begrudgingly rallied behind Pelion once more now that Thrawn's return was revealed to be a hoax. While all of this was going on, Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade were investigating a disturbing resurgence of clone Imperial sleeper cells when Mara went missing, and his search for her brought him to a little-known planet on the very edge of charted space, called Nirawan. On Nirawan, Luke worked with the intelligent avian Quam Ja to recover Mara, and further snooping revealed a seemingly Imperial base. However, this base wasn't entirely Imperial, as it was operated by a majority of blue-skinned Chiss. The two Jedi had stumbled upon the Hand of Thrawn, HQ for Thrawn's Imperial satrapy, the Empire of the Hand. Meeting Admiral Voss Park and the long-thought-dead Baron Soontir Fel, as well as an unborn clone of Thrawn himself, Mara and Luke decided that the Empire of the Hand could not be turned over to the Imperial Remnant, and heavily damaged the base as they escaped in a stolen Chiss craft, along with a parting gift: the entire unaltered Caamas document, which would settle the rising tensions in the New Republic. Though the Hand of Thrawn would be repaired and reoccupied, the Empire of the Hand remained a separate entity, and did not confederate with the rest of the Imperial Remnant, as they would have a part to play later. Aboard the ISD Chimera, Supreme Commander Gilad Pelion shook hands with the New Republic Chief of State Ponk Gaversum, and signed the historic Pelion-Gaversum Treaty, formally ending the over 2-decade-long Galactic Civil War, bringing forth a new era of peace. If there wasn't a better way to symbolize the newfound peace between the New Republic and the Empire, Luke Skywalker took to wed Mara Jade on Coruscant, and despite some setbacks at Luke's bachelor party and Mara's dress fitting, the efforts of Booster Tarek, Talon Card, and the core members of Rogue Squadron kept would-be Imperial saboteurs from ruining the ceremony. In the wake of the peace agreement, the galaxy enjoyed 3 long years of relative peace, where Luke and Mara Jade Skywalker enjoyed their honeymoon on the quaint world of Maya Combi, Leia Organa Solo was elected to another term as Chief of State, and Lando Calrissian married Tendra Rysant, a wealthy businesswoman. In 21 ABY, Boba Fett, who had long survived the Sarlacc as well as several other encounters with the Solos, Skywalkers, and other Jedi over the years, accepted a contract on Manda-LORE Fen Shisa, put out by former Kaminoan clone master Ton Wee, in revenge for his raid on Kamino during the Clone Wars. Fett tracked his mark to the outer rim world of Shogun, where, after escaping the local carnivorous fauna, Shisa saved Fett, but was greatly injured himself. So the grizzled bounty hunter put the old Manda-LORE out of his misery, not without first fulfilling his dying wish. Boba would travel to Manda-LORE and learn about his father's adopted heritage, and by 23 ABY, he reluctantly accepted the title of Manda-LORE. By 22 ABY, all 3 of the Solo children enroll in their Uncle Luke's Jedi Academy on Yavin 4, of which young Anakin Solo goes on quite a few adventures, including helping freeing the ancient Jedi Master Ikrit from a nearby Yavin temple, and bringing the recovered Golden Globe to Yavin 8 to release the Melody spirits trapped within it. He also faced his fears on Dagobah, accompanied Jedi historian Tion Solusar to Vijun to recover Kenobi's lightsaber from Vader's castle, and helped defeat an alleged sorcerer, Orlok, who was using technology such as repulsor lifts to feign a powerful connection to the Force. At the tail end of 22 ABY, Luke and Mara Jade Skywalker, along with the New Republic diplomat, were invited by the Empire of the Hand and the Chiss Ascendancy in the Unknown Regions to visit the newly discovered wreckage of Outbound Flight, covered in Part 6 of this series. After linking up with Aristocra Chaform Bintrano of the Ascendancy and one of Suntir Fel's sons with his squad of 501st Stormtroopers from the Empire of the Hand, they found a colony of survivors living within Outbound Flight's wreckage, and were able to repel an attack by the treacherous Vagari, masquerading as allies. In truth, Aristocra Form B knew that their Jaroon guests had been Vagari all along, and had set this whole thing up to provoke an attack, allowing the Ascendancy to declare war against the Vagari Star Empire, without breaking their doctrine which forbid preemptive strikes against perceived threats. The Empire of the Hand, on the other hand, would continue to persist for some time, but by the Yuuzhan Vong War it had dispersed, either absorbed into the Chiss Ascendancy or destroyed by the Killiks or the Vong themselves, we don't know. However, we do know that the Fel family would go on to join the Chiss Ascendancy. By 23 ABY, Brakkus had returned, this time as head of the Shadow Academy, an attempt to counter Luke's Jedi Praxium with a training facility for Dark Jedi, and he worked with the Second Imperium, a group of Imperial hardliners who refused to acknowledge the Pelion-Gaversum Treaty. They first struck at Lando Calrissian's mining operation at Gendiver Station, within the gas giant Yavin, where Jacen, Jaina, and Chewbacca's nephew, Lobaka, were taken captive by the Night Sister Tamith Kai. However, the 3 Jedi trainees were able to resist attempts at brainwashing and escaped the Shadow Academy. Next, they struck at Coruscant, where Jaina's friend, Zek, was abducted and recruited into the Shadow Academy, but the twins, using one of Coruscant's orbital mirrors, managed to disrupt the Shadow Academy's cloaking device, and it jumped into hyperspace before New Republic vessels could engage it. Following a mission to Hapes, where the Jedi trainees helped their fellow student, Tenel Ka, foil an assassination attempt against her grandmother, the current Hapen Queen, Ta Chum, Zek led an Imperium raid against Kashyyyk, but the Jedi intercepted him, and during a lightsaber duel with Jaina, he could not bring himself to kill his friend, and warned her to stay away from the Yavin Academy. As forewarned, the Shadow Academy's final target was the Yavin 4 Jedi Academy, and a major offensive was led by Zek and Tamith Kai, where Kai was defeated by Tenel Ka, and Zek experienced a change of heart at the last moment, and made a failed attempt to stop a bomb from destroying much of the Great Temple. However, he did save his friends. Zek would later go on to join the Jedi Academy and redeem himself after a brief stint as a bounty hunter. On the Shadow Academy itself, Brakkus discovered that the supposed return of the Emperor, which the Second Imperium movement had rallied behind, had been a hoax all along, and recognizing that the jig was up, the faux Emperor's guards initiated the station's self-destruct sequence, ending Brakkus, the Shadow Academy, and the Second Imperium. That same year, Bothan Councillor Borsk Felia was elected Chief of State of the New Republic, succeeding Leia Organa Solo's final term of office. Going into 24 ABY, a new extremist threat emerges. The Anti-Human Diversity Alliance sought to right the wrongs of the Galactic Empire and other governments that had oppressed aliens over the millennia. However, its leader, the Twi'lek Nola Tarkona, had more sinister ambitions of exterminating humanity entirely. The Diversity Alliance began to reverse engineer the long-defunct Krytos virus to affect humans rather than aliens. However, before the work was completed, they were thwarted by Jaina, Jacen, Zek, Luke, and Raynar Thol, and Nola succumbed to her own creation. Following this, Han Solo and the Jedi hindered a hostile government takeover by Black Sun, which had planted saboteurs and spies within the highest echelons of the New Republic's government, after which Leia worked to root out the infiltrators and restore security. In the aftermath of the crises generated by the Diversity Alliance and Black Sun, Jacen, Jaina, Anakin, Lobaka, Tenel Ka, and Zek were promoted from Jedi trainees to apprentices, and could now study under Jedi Knights and Masters. Before the year's end, it seems to be the end of an era as well, seeing as Mon Mothma, one of the core founders of the Rebel Alliance and first Chief of State of the New Republic, passes away peacefully in her sleep, and Admiral Akbar retires to his home on Mon Calamari. Luke's revitalized Jedi Order, though still small compared to the old Jedi Order numbering in the tens of thousands before the outbreak of the Clone Wars, had rightfully reclaimed its place as the guardians of peace and justice in the New Republic. In 25 ABY, the New Republic Historical Council updates the Galactic Standard Calendar to the very same that I've been using throughout this series, as well as all of my transmissions, choosing the miraculous victory at the Battle of Yavin and the Death Star's destruction as the epoch from which to measure the years, though the Great Resynchronization is still sometimes used alongside it. It is around this time that the extra-galactic Yuuzhan Vong begin ramping up their preparations for the invasion of the galaxy, with Manda-LORE working to destabilize the New Republic from within, while Yeoman Kar infiltrates the Extra-Galactic Society, a group of astronomers dedicated to the study of nearby galaxies, to ensure that the New Republic doesn't see what's coming. I will elaborate further on the Yuuzhan Vong and their nature, as well as the subsequent galaxy-devastating war in my next transmission. This ends my findings on the decline of the Empire. Stay tuned for the next transmission of this lecture series, where the new Jedi Order era will be discussed. Special thanks to my Ori Ramakad tier patrons, Zexen the Wirefox Terrier, Zim the Despot, Matt Patton, Hawk2274, Cal Scarada, Moonman, Noah Shane 45, The Framinator, John Hollingsworth, Jaleel, Kyle Dealeman, 2100 AB, Kian Kier, Nolan Ueno, Ian Waller, Bofix, Butcherai, and Zyzer. If you'd like to support this channel, please visit my Patreon to find out how. Link is in the description. In the meantime, keep your comm channels open for future transmissions, and don't forget to subscribe. Tad Larkin, out.